right. In the meantime, I'm told that we are getting live pictures of Prime Minister Narendra Modi holding a bilateral with the French President Emmanuel Macron, and this is happening on the sidelines of the G20 Summit. A warm hug and greetings that are now being exchanged between the two leaders there as we are getting those live pictures. A series of bilaterals that is lined up today as well for the Prime Minister, as today is the second and the last day of the G20 Summit. Yes, Srinjoy, pictures coming in of Prime Minister Modi and the French President.
Undoubtedly, Macron and Modi are very old friends. Unlike many of these leaders here, like Scholz or even Rishi Sunak, Albanese of Australia, they are all new prime ministers. But as far as Macron is concerned, they know each other for a long time. They are both chairmen of the ISA, the International Solar Alliance. And also Macron is expected to be in India in a few months. So all these things have to be taken into account. The French have a special relationship with India. And that actually goes back to 1998. At a time when India had just detonated several nuclear devices and the world had turned its back on India. At that time, the one country that stood by India was France, which is why there are three areas where the French and Indians work very closely. They are, as number one, defense, number two, civil nuclear energy, number three, space. And as you're well aware, the Rafale is a French aircraft. That is the one that has been bought by the Indian Air Force. And India is considering buying the naval version of the Rafale. It's one of the two contenders. The F-18 is another one, but the Rafale is one of the two contenders for the Navy. So very clearly, India and France have a good relationship. Modi and Macron have a good relationship. So as a result, you would expect both sides to sort of take off from where they last met.
Absolutely, because with those pictures coming in, clearly cements the ties between India and France, doesn't it, Srinjoy? Because if you look at the bilateral meeting, that is also coming after the Indian Air Force hosted the Garud air exercise in Rajasthan sector this month, and the Army Chief is also on a 3-day visit to France.
Oh, yes, of course. There are a variety of links. As I mentioned, there are three areas where India and France work very closely together. One, defense. And as you are aware, the 36 Rafales have arrived in India. That is the biggest purchase India has made in recent years. Then, of course, there is the matter of the Navy looking for aircraft, and Rafale is very strongly in contention. That's really the second thing. Thirdly, you will have civil nuclear energy. That partnership is taking place. And of course, the French and Indians are working together with, in the space sector. ISRO and the French agency, they work very closely. A lot of times, ISRO launches take off from Suriname, where the French have still some kind of contact. So as a result, there is no problem with the India-France relationship. And yes, Macron is likely to be in India very shortly, perhaps in the next few months.
Right, but also, Srinjoy, the French strategic document on Indo-Pacific also places India at the center of the bilateral partnership, as President Macron wants India to be the key to the Indo-Pacific challenge.
Yes, absolutely. The French are very aware of this. The French know that there are really very few countries with this heft in the Indo-Pacific. America, of course, but apart from that, India. And America is not just in the Indo-Pacific. India here is at the center of the Indo-Pacific. And this is something the French, who are also in the Indo-Pacific, actually realize that, which is why the French have made it very clear. They want India to play a major role in the Indo-Pacific. And India is already doing that, as you know.
All right, but Shinjoy, if we talk about the relationship and the warm relationship, which of course can be seen through those pictures that are coming in. I mean, everyone, as we are looking at the top leaders, be it from the United States, from France, and other top leaders as well, have been waiting to meet Prime Minister Narendra Modi because he's been there at the center of attention as far as India there is concerned, giving out a message of peace. And this is something, when it comes to Ukraine war, the Prime Minister, what he has said before, has also been seconded by the French President.
Oh, not only the French president, there are many others, because the Indian position is very clear that number one, there should be peace immediately. A cessation of hostilities has to happen immediately, after which, of course, there should be diplomatic dialogue. And India has made it very clear, even to President Vladimir Putin, who is also, Russia is also a very close friend of India, that look, in the 21st century, there is no place for war. And this is something Putin was told in front of the TV cameras, perhaps deliberately by Prime Minister. So India is making it very clear that India does not want that war in the Ukraine to continue. And this is something that has been seconded by many countries, including France.
And what about are India and France also looking towards fresh and new joint ventures in the defense sector? I mean, in fact, when it comes to for India for manufacturing high-end platforms, from aircraft engines to even long-range submarines, how is it looking forward for both of the countries there, Srinjoy?
Well, first of all, this Safran engine, that is being talked about a lot. Already people in India and people in France have been discussing that. And that engine is being considered very, very acceptable, very viable as far as India is concerned. There is talk that if there is a deal, the Safran engine could well be manufactured in India. That would fit in with the Prime Minister's policy of Atmanirbharata. In recent years, India has made it very clear that, look, if you want to have Indian armed forces, your equipment, then try and make in India. One, you make in India and you make for the world. There are many countries who are planning to do that. You make in India, and not only do you give it to India, but you give it to other countries. The Swedes have done it. The other countries have also done it. So this is the beginning of Atmanirbharata, in a sense that you will make in India and then you make for the world. So that is something the French are very aware of, and the French also want these opportunities.
Absolutely, because what Srinjoy is pointing out, that this clearly translates into further intensification of defense ties between India and France, which are close allies. Even as President Macron has also said for Prime Minister Modi's Atmanirbhar Bharat vision as well. But Srinjoy, when it comes to India and France, there is a very forward-looking relationship, because it is on likelihood that they will be also forging relations with close allies like Australia and the UAE and the other island countries in the far Pacific.
Oh yes, of course, because the French are already here in the Indo-Pacific, and the French make it very clear that they are different from Britain. They are different from, say, Germany or Britain, because the French don't have to occasionally send a ship here. The French are already here in Reunion Island, so they are part of the Indo-Pacific. Of course the Americans are here, of course they are part of Quad, of course the Americans are part of Malabar. But apart from that, the French are also here. The French are here in Reunion. France is a P5 country. France has a good relationship with India. So very clearly, there is a match. And France and India have been working together, particularly in these three areas of defense, of space, and of civil nuclear energy. And both countries are very happy with the way things have gone.
Because that just you mentioned, because what is being said that after meeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the French President will also be meeting the Prime Minister of Australia, even as both countries are reviving ties post the AUKUS hurdle that had happened, the obfuscation that had really happened at this part of AUKUS. Is it in a way in a revival mode, Srinjoy?
Well, it's between France and Australia, because when AUKUS happened, this was basically an alliance, an Anglo-American alliance with Australia to manufacture nuclear submarines. The country that was hurt the most because a deal was virtually signed between France and Australia for the manufacture of submarines. Now, that was shafted. And when that was shafted, the French were very upset that this had happened. So for a while, the relationship was not very good at all between Australia and France. In fact, India also told the Australians, okay, you're doing this, you're a friend, you're a partner, why didn't you tell us earlier? In fact, we were told only 1 hour before the announcement. Now, that is something that the French have to sort out with the Australians. And that process could well begin when Albanese, who is part of a new government, and Macron meet later in the day. That would be a very good development because that would help the situation in the Indo-Pacific.
All right. Srinjoy, please do stay on with us. Major General G.D. Bakshi sir is with us here also on the broadcast. Sir, good morning. The Modi-Macron bonhomie is on display as the Prime Minister and the French President seems to be interacting on a very positive level, sir.
Absolutely. You know, with France, we've had an excellent relationship, strategic partnership. France has proved to be an extremely reliable strategic partner. And this goes back right to the 1950s when we got the Orega fighters and the others from them. And this relationship has continued. Don't forget the fact that when we had the nuclear explosion and all countries were put sanctions on us, starting from the United States downward, it was France that stuck by us in that period. Then it gave us the Mirages that was so very effective in the Kargil war and even thereafter. And then, of course, now we have the Rafales coming in from France, the Scorpion submarine coming in from France. France, I do think, is one of our redoubtable strategic partners now also for the Asia-Pacific theater. One of our most trusted allies, more or less quasi-ally, if I may so call it, and reliable, time-tested, conflicts. There is no record ever of them, withholding any weapons, reneging on any agreement, which unfortunately does seem to have happened with the Americans, who stopped the flow of weapons post-65, etc., etc. We have no such hiccups or hiatuses in the Indo-French, bilateral. And you can see that bonhomie on display now. Even France wanted to have its own independent nuclear force. Therefore, it tacitly supported India when we had gone nuclear. One of the few countries not to impose any sanctions, and that's saying a lot. One of the few countries that is prepared to share its cutting-edge technology. Most countries are hesitant, even if we are prepared to pay, cash up front. People are not prepared, like the Americans have refused to give us the stealth fighters, F-35s, which they have given to Japan. They have refused to give us nuclear submarines, which they are now giving to Australia, etc. So there are limitations in other partnerships, but this is like the Chinese have coined that phrase, a partnership without limits. The India-France partnership can also be so described.